For our next session tonight, titled Adi Shakti to Modern Shakti, I'd like to invite Harshali Singh and Alka Pande on the dais. It's an honor to have you, ladies. Please be seated. I would request the audience member to please settle down. Alka Pande did her double MA in History of Arts from Bombay University in 1981 and Punjab University in 1983. In 1996, she was awarded a PhD in Art History from the Punjab University. Her thesis was on the study of Ardhanarishwara in Indian arts with special reference to Indian sculpture. She is currently working as art consultant at Indian Habitat Center, New Delhi. She is also the visiting faculty of DJ Academy of Design, Tamil Nadu. The book in question is devoted to the understanding of omnipresent and all-powerful Shakti and her sacred abodes known as Pithas. The story of Devi Sati and Lord Shiva ended tragically with the death of Sati. As the discussant for this session, we are delighted to have Harshali Singh on the stage. She is a New Delhi-based member judge in District Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission. Dr. Harshali Singh has written in several literary genres, poetry to fiction, columns to essays. She has been conferred with Iconic Author Award in 2022 by Aesthetics International Lifestyle magazine. Over to you, ladies. Please give it a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. It's a wonderful and an honor to be on this stage tonight. And I hope you have been having a great day, because I've been enjoying myself hearing all the varied discussions that have been happening. We've been skipping from one hall to the other, and we've been having a wonderful time since morning. So thank you so much for staying back and being part of this discussion with Alka ji and I. And so today's topic is the Adi Shakti to the Modern Shakti. In my understanding, Adi Shakti or Shakti is the life force. It is the divine mother, the divine power, which helps, which nurtures, which provides security and nourishment. It is a womb from which many come out, or many are given life. And so it is not very, what should I say, it is not a very long thought to say that, like in other cultures, our culture would also revere it, make it into a Shakti that is in all of us, the Shakti that you have, Alka ma'am, researched and made it your own. So tell us a little bit about your understanding of the Shakti.
Thank you, Harshali, for the laying down the landscape for investigating Shakti. But before that, I want to really thank the Bhopal Literature and Art Society for holding this session, to my friend Raghav Chandra, who's been gracious as always in incorporating an inclusion of women and the eternal goddess. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I know it's been a long day, but I'm delighted for those who've stayed back, because I know you've stayed back because you want to, and that's wonderful. I would like to begin with a very basic shlok which I recite every day. Sarvamangal Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sarthike Sharne Trayambike Gauri Narayane Namostute. So this is salutations to the goddess Narayani, who's here, who's everywhere, and whose graciousness, whose auspiciousness should bless us every single moment of the day. So my book really is about the 51 Shakti Peeths. I'll just hold the book across because the society has done a wonderful cover which I've seen when I came. It's a small book which you can hold in your hand. It's almost like a Bible which is put in every five-star hotel in your room. And in some ways, this could also be a Bible for all of us who believe in the eternal goddess, who believe in the primordial energy which guides us, which guides our actions, and which is pure consciousness. It's also about the balance between Shiv and Shakti. So would you like to begin by asking any specific question, or should I just...
Should we go, we'd like to understand about how you see Shakti.
Okay.
What is it that you understand from that word?
Okay. So for me, I just want to go back to a personal anecdote. I'm actually looking for my glasses. Yeah, I've got them. I'm actually going to go back to a personal anecdote because, you know, I come from a family where my father is a great believer of the goddess. And we have, as I've been growing up every day, I've heard the Chandi part being recited in my house for the Navratris and the worship of the goddess being present. So everything we devote to the goddess. So when my publishers Rupa asked me to do a book on Shakti, I thought that there would be nothing better than doing on the Shakti Peeths. Shakti Peeth's story, as we all know, is the story of when the father of Sati, Daksha Prajapati, did a big yagya, and because he disliked his son-in-law so much, who was not what in his mind what a son-in-law should be, and did not invite him to the yagya, the wife of Shiva, Sati, and daughter of Daksha went there uninvited. And when she went there, she saw what a disgrace her father had done to her husband, that she jumped into the yagya itself. So smitten was Shiva with sorrow that he took the body of his wife and started doing the tandav with the body of his wife on the shoulders. So deep was the tandav that the gods got very, very worried and realized that if he is not going to be stopped, the world is going to come to an end. So they went to God, the great God, one of the triumvirates, Vishnu, and begged him to appease Shiva in some way. So Vishnu did what he thought should be done. He went with his Sudarshan Chakra and cut the body of the Devi into many parts. Now many people believe that there were 108 parts, some people believe there were 101, but I stuck to 51 important Peethas, and through those Peethas, different aspects of the Devi, her different body parts symbolizing different aspects of the Sharira are seen. And we in our mythology, particularly Indian mythology, these are stories which are actually done to give certain, how should I say, tellings to people. And as we will go through our conversation, we will see that how each Shakti Peeth is symbolic of some aspect of the Devi.
That's wonderful, and I'm looking forward to that. But before we get into that, I'd like to know, what was the impetus that made you research this? What was it? Only the publisher coming to you and saying that, we'd like to do a book? Or was there something deeper? Was there something more impactful that happened wherein you said that, yes, I want to do this?
So I think it was dovetailing beautifully into my own cultural identity, into my personal identity, into the kind family that I came from. And I think the publisher also asked me so because he knew that I was very much part of that trajectory of an Indic thought. The book which I had done before with them was on the body, the Sharira. So as you will see that in our, particularly in all our Indic mythology, whether it's Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Hinduism, you will see that the body plays a very important role, and the divine is made in the image of man. So after the Body Sutra, in which I had looked at the body, which becomes actually the receptacle or the portion in which divinity lives, because Tat Tvam Asi, what does it mean? So be it. What does Soham mean? All these are thoughts where we talk of the divinity living within ourselves. So from that point of research, the looking into the body parts was becoming very, very, how should I say, as I use the word dovetail, it dovetailed into my own thought process, and therefore my journey of the Shakti Peeth started. And I had also traveled to many of them even before I was commissioned with the book, because that is very much part of my spiritual journey.
How lovely. Another question that ties into the first one is that through the research and the massive scale of research that the book would have included, are there any characteristics that we kind of give to the traditional Shakti, and are they different from what society expects Shakti to be like? Are there any
are we talking? So I presume we are talking of how Shakti is shown in iconography. You have Durga astride the tiger. You have the Devi, the part of the Navratris when she comes as Mahish Mardini, where she comes to slay the buffalo demon. The Shakti has her own icons of the tiger, of the Khadgamala, where she's wearing skulls of people around her bare body. So the Devi is shown in a terrifying way, in a nurturing way, in a benign way, in a loving way. She's a Saptamatrikas, where as the seven goddesses, she is the consort of the seven gods. And as the boon bestowing Devi, as Lakshmi, she has a different form. So there are numerous forms of the divine mother, the divine goddess, the eternal goddess as she is known.
My question was that what we see
today,
what we
you
see
mean
today,
women?
yes,
the role of women,
yes, the traditional role of women as is given in the books or the Vedas or any of the the books that have been written, and now in today's world, are the characteristics different and as you have found in your research? Is there any difference, or is it all what is expected?
India is a highly nuanced country, and I think it's a very loaded question. I don't know if I can give a general answer to that, but definitely there is one thing, that in India, a woman is very often worshipped as Devi, but at another level, at a more mundane, at a more material level, at a more immediate level, she's often commodified as well. But I think there are different layers, different cultures, different interpretations. You see that in indigenous societies, we have matriarchal societies. You see that many women are given a prominent place, and in many societies where patriarchy is at its best, I do not want to get into that space because that becomes gender politics, identity politics. But at a cultural level, I will say that a woman is held in very, very high esteem in the Indian context.
So has the Adi Shakti now transitioned into the modern Shakti?
I think the modern Indian woman is a very powerful woman. It depends in the ecosystem she's operating. It depends on the support system she has. It depends on her own personal self-esteem. It all depends on her own faith. And you have so many stories of women who have who have been trailblazers, women who are not even known in the newspapers, but they create revolutions in their own little society. So I think there are many Devis floating around. And maybe they are not celebrated, but they are making a big difference. I see it in many of my people, many of the women I work with, and I always hold them in very high esteem. And as I feel like a Dashabhuja Durga, a woman can definitely multitask far more, with due apologies to all the gorgeous men sitting here who do one thing at a time. They are very focused, they do very well, they are very pragmatic, but they cannot create. They don't have a womb. And it's the woman who has the womb, it's the woman who creates. The men are seed givers. So I think it's very, very clear in that itself that a woman, like her reproductive system, the woman is highly complicated, highly nuanced, very difficult to handle, and can be both terrifying, loving, and benign.
I think we all agree, even the men. So has Shakti reached her full potential?
Shakti has always been at her full potential. It all depends on the Shakti herself, and I think it is the women, if we talk at a very material level, who have given the power to the men. If you look at the pre-pastoral societies, you have the Amazonian woman who had actually cut her left breast because she was hunting. She was not sitting at the hearth and the fire. But over the years, when society became pastoral, women became more nurturing. Women started taking control over the kitchen. So you see, it's with the kitchen that she was wound around in many ways. I think the judicious way today is to have a very good balance, as it is in our philosophy, as we see in the concept of Ardha Nari Ishvara, where the Lord is half woman. There is a complete complementarity between the Purush and the Prakriti, between the Yin and the Yang, and between the male and the female.
Oh, wonderful. That is a very thought-provoking comment that you made at the very end, that balance is eventually what we really require in our society. But what are the critical changes that we need to get this balance, to create it, or to reimagine it, or to impact more people to understand it? What is it? What are the few critical changes that you think, in your view, are necessary for our society to find this balance between the masculine and the feminine?
So, again, this is a very, very challenging ecosystem, because it's very easy to say and talk about gender and politics, to talk of women empowerment. We have a woman empowerment ministry, we have women's studies in colleges, but these are all at the theoretical base. When we talk of theory, we talk of Lucy Irigaray, we talk of Judith Butler, we talk of sexual politics. It's fantastic. Lots of great thought is being done, lots of great research has been done. But when we come to the actual way where women are working, it's and leaving their homes to work as little potential Shaktis, there is this new Me Too thing which has come out. Now, when you are asking me what should we think, again I think there has to be balance. When you look at the Me Too, I see a lot of men around me so scared these days, because they say, agar hum kuch bhi galat keh dein, तो वो हम गलती से छू भी ले उनको तो Me Too हो जाएगा. Now, this is something which as a woman I feel very strongly about. I'll definitely support a woman. But what I see is this Me Too has become also a political tool. The women who are using Me Too are using it to some extent to their advantage, and the people who really need to use the Me Too don't have the means, wherewithals, or even the education to do so. Again here, thoughtfulness, sensitivity, compassion is required on both ends. Here I'm even talking of including the male and being compassionate and thoughtful about the male action. Again here, it is about gender balance and sensitivity. Again, we can learn a lot from our mythology and our Puranic tales and the way the Indian gods and goddesses are shown Every Indian god has a female consort. And this is one thing here, I'll just deviate a little bit, that we are the only religion in the world which believes in vilas, which believes in pleasure, which believes in the four purusharths of dharma, artha, kama and moksha. And that is where all four are in balance, that the Shakti that you are talking of in the material world today can find a place. Because if you don't take the aspect of karma into dharma and artha in equal balance, you cannot get on to moksha. So when we talk of Shakti, the Shakti is not only the terrifying, it's like Caldwell book, who writes a whole book saying, "Oh, terrifying mother." You don't have to be terrified of Shakti. Shakti can be quiet, can be soft, can be calm, but very, very forceful, as you would see in the various manifestations of the Devi. When you look at Saraswati, for example, or you look at Varahi, or you look at Indrani, or you look at so many of the various goddesses that you see, the Kuladevatas, the Grama Devis, they are all bodies of Shakti. When you see the paintings which have been done by the indigenous artists, they are all full of Shakti in the atmosphere. When they make the Kalpa Vriksha, which comes out of the Samudra Manthan, Lakshmi comes out of the Samudra Manthan, how do these things kind of play out in our lives? And how do you have a balance with them in the real world? That is when the true Shakti emerges. But before we go any further, I have a small PPT of about maybe 10 minutes, and I want to show you the important pithas which are there north, south, east, west. There's even one in Bangladesh, there is one in Sri Lanka, there is one in Pakistan, just to show you that how the evocation or the manifestations of Shakti are seen in the South Asian subcontinent. They are known by different names, but each Shakti Peeth has a particular style of architecture. The prasad of that Devi Mandir is different. When you go to, say, Kamakya, which is one of the greatest Shakti Peeths, the prasad there is of a bali. And if you see in pre-Vedic times, meat, sweet, and alcohol were the three prasads. There was fasting and feasting before the prasads. So we talk of intermittent fasting today. This was very much part of how people lived in the pre-Vedic times. And then we see that if you go down to South India and you see a Shakti Peeth there, the prasad there becomes different. It changes. There is a different kind of a khichdi which is worshipped and given to the goddess, and no meat is given. So you see, if you look at the Shakti Peeths, you will see each one of them having a different kind of architecture, a different kind of prasad, a different kind of ritual, and this is what is so beautiful about the cultural diversity of the wonder that is India. So let me just show you the Shakti Peeth. This is the can you इसके अगला दिखाएंगे? Now this is the Prajeshwari Temple in Kangra in Himachal Pradesh. What you see here is the local Himachali architecture, and in front you will see a place for the bali. I've actually been to this temple, and I saw many years ago, almost 30 years ago, a buffalo demon being taken around, and it was quite horrific for me, because when they cut the head of the buffalo, as they had given the buffalo alcohol, you know, the body still went on running for a little bit, even though the head was taken off. This is the Chintapurni temple in the Una district of Himachal Pradesh, and you will see here the lavish use of gold. The temple is much smaller, and you see a badka paid around. You will see that many of them, offering the red chunari is a very typical ritual in a Devi temple. Next. This is the Gandaki temple in Muktinath in Nepal, and here if you notice the architecture of Himachal and this temple, there is some kind of a similarity that you see, a kind of a flattish tiered roof, And here, of course, it's a tiered temple because this is very much from the, a little bit what we call in olden terms, Far East, from China kind of pagoda kind of building of the temple, which is different to the other shikhara of the temples in Himachal. Next, please. This is the temple to which, in fact, our Prime Minister had gone, the Jasori Devi temple in Bangladesh. And if you see here, there is again a double layer, and it is almost like what you call a Mughal style architecture with the arches, except there is a shikhar instead of a gumbad on top. Next. This is the very famous Kamakya Devi temple in Assam. It was built over 3 stages, and it is here that it is said that the yoni of the Devi fell, and it is here that the male priests bow down to what they call it the menstruating liquid, though of course it is not exactly that. It is said that the river turns red for 3 or 4 days because of the coming of iron solution into the river, but they take it symbolically to mean that. But here priests actually bow down and put the menstruating liquid on their foreheads, and you can imagine how patriarchy bows down to the Devi here. Next, please. Yeah. Now, this is the Kanyakumari temple in Tamil Nadu, the Kanyashram rock temple. And this here you see, if you also look at the, I don't have a juxtaposition slide of the shore temple in Tamil Nadu, the architecture is quite similar, and the first rays of the sun look down into the icon of the Devi. Next, please. This is the Hinglaj temple in Pakistan. There is no shrine here, but I want to give you another point that in most of the Devi temples, the Peethas which are, you don't really have a Devi Murti. There are little wedges of mountains which are symbolic of the Devi, and different later, over the years, different images of the Devi are made at that point. But the clefts of mountains and which are symbolic of the body part of the Devi are seen here. Next, please. Yeah. Now, this is the Chamundeshwari Temple in Mysuru, which is very, very well known in Karnataka. And here you see the Gopuram, how different it becomes. It is very much symbolic of the Dravid style of architecture, and the image of the Devi is inside. Next, please. This is the Kalighat temple in Kolkata, West Bengal, where it is said that the head of the Devi fell here. And if you see that the architecture of the temple is very, very different to what you have been seeing till now, and not even similar to Kamakya, which is next door. It has its own very regional style of the region. Next, please. This is the Godavariti temple in Rajamundry in Andhra Pradesh. And what you see are massive shivlings actually outside, and the Nandi bull and a huge shivling outside, and then it is Uma Kotilingeshwara Swami temple, the temple of, actually it is of Shiva, but the name of the Devi is done there because one of her body parts fell here. Next, please. This is the Sri Salam Malik Arjun temple in Andhra Pradesh, and you can see the lavish use of gold in the Gopurams, which then leads deep into the cavernous Garbhagriha of the Devi. Next, please. This is the Tarini temple in Odisha, very much part of the Nagar style of temple. So what I'm trying to show you is that how the Shakti Peeth, though it is the same body, how in India, as you go down the landscape of India, the morphology changes, the shapes change, the architecture changes, and even the rituals change. So this is a very, very beautiful, okay. Now this is the Sharada Devi temple in Maihar in Madhya Pradesh. Now this is very, very modern. The back side of the temple is the more older style. This is where they say Maihar, Ma ka har gira tha yahan is temple mein. And this is also the temple of Baba Alauddin Khan. He used to walk down here, the guru of Ravi Shankar, and come and pray at the feet of the goddess. He was a great devotee of the goddess. And here you see there is a murti made in a black granite, but at the back there is I have forgotten to mention that in every Shakti Peeth, there is a Bhairav temple. And Bhairav is the wandering Shiva who is wandering around the Shakti. Next, please. This is the East Midnapore, West Bengal temple, and here you see two parts of an architecture, the older part at the back and a newer courtyard for people to sit. You can make out from the materials used in architecture. Next, please. This is the Tripura Sundari temple in Tripura, the Udaipur of Tripura, and you see at the back the architecture is a bit similar to the Kamakya temple that you saw, which was more in white, but this is in a more terracotta finish, because the terracotta is much used in eastern part. If you see the temples of Bishnupur, where you have lovely terracottas, which is in West Bengal, and as you keep going down to Bangladesh, they use a lot of terracotta and materials from the earth. Next, please. This is the Kalika temple in Pavagadh in Gujarat, which is on top of a mountain. And you will see that in the very Hindu way of temple building, they are either on top of mountains or near the sea or a lake. This is how the temples normally are. Either on top of mountains, like you see this Pavagadh, the Maihar temple, which is on top of a mountain. You have to take a cable car now to go up there. Or they are close to the sea, close to the lakes, and this is how you'll see most of the places where the temples are built. In fact, even in Amarkantak and all the places in Madhya Pradesh, you see a lot of them near the ocean. Not here, it's not the ocean, the lakes and rivers here. Next. This is another very beautiful temple of Sri Lanka. Now, do you see the entirely different color, which changes from Tamil Nadu to Sri Lanka? You see a lot of similar kind in the beautiful Madurai temple, but here it becomes almost over-ornamented like the Hoysala art in Karnataka in sculpture. Here the colors become, brighter and super bright colors, very, very different. But this, of course, is the Indrakshi temple in Sri Lanka, where another body part of the Devi fell. Next. I think isn't this the last slide? Yeah. So I just wanted to show you a very quick journey on how the Devi paths have traveled, how the Shakti has traveled from different parts of the sacred geography of the Indian subcontinent.
That was actually a journey for us as well. I'm sure everybody had a great time. I think, yes, that deserves an applause. But having watched all this and having heard you and your passion for this, the research that you've done, how has this research or learning about the Shakti, finding things out, you said visiting while we were talking earlier, how has this impacted your life and your creative pursuits?
Maybe it's just that time of my life. Maybe it's also the pandemic, and I'm sure that all of us who are sitting here,
ladies,
and we've gone
I'm
through.
sorry. Yeah. I would like to remind that we
time?
are, yes,
Okay.
we are running
I'll
out
make
of
the
time,
last.
so please
last.
Thank you.
So the pandemic has been also very useful for people of my age group. Definitely, I'm very proud to say I'm a senior citizen. And you know, in our tradition, Shashti Purti is a very, very big thing. It is said that when you are 60, all the stars apparently become the same place as they were when you were born. So the pandemic happened when I turned 60, and literally there was an enforced slowing down. The book had been done, and because there was so much time to inhale, to breathe, to think, to reflect, that so much of the book, so much of the research that I had done, I really assimilated it in a different way. I also took the time to do a lot of courses of temple architecture, aesthetics. So these 2.5 years, I've really been living in the world of ideas, in the world of, you know, many times it's a mid-career break, but I would say it's an end-of-life break for me, because in these 2.5 years, the amount of courses, online courses I did with the time that I had, that it really helped me to just become more devoted and actually understand what bhakti is and truly understand what surrender to a superior power means. So it has been wonderful. Thank you.
Lovely. How lovely. I
Thank
think
you,
this
lady.
discussion, I'm sorry, I'm going to take another minute. I think this discussion has certainly told us that we need power and grace, and you embody it, ma'am. Any questions? I think everybody is still processing the kind of information we've been able to bring together. So, oh, wonderful.
So this is for you, Alka. You've been extremely devoted. You've been extremely devoted in your study of the goddess Durga, and in some ways you embody that in your own, the kind of energy that you bring into whatever you do. I've seen you in art, in writing, but in India we have different manifestations of the same divinity, whereas in most other religions you have more homogeneity in terms of representations. Why do you think we allow? Is that because of local cultures that allow different manifestations, different representations? Somewhere you will have small pindis, like in Vaishno Devi. Somewhere you will have a full murti of a Devi. Somewhere else you will have some other form. What explains different physical or symbolic representations of the divinity in Indian culture? Is that because of localism, or it is part of our thinking that, of the myriad gods and goddesses, and therefore there are different sub-forms of the goddess in each place? Is it just a local representation, or it is our cultural acceptance of different sub-gods and goddesses, the pantheon?
You'll have to give me 2 minutes to answer. It's a very loaded question. Thank you for the question, Raghav. The thing is that I'll just begin with some differences between the West and us, and even the Far East. We are a deeply interpretive religion. We don't have a book. When you look at Christianity, it is a book. You go by the book. So whenever you look at their art, it is more about the Madonna, Jesus, and you go by the book. If you look at older civilizations like the Egyptian civilization, the Roman civilization, or the Mayan civilization, they also have a lot of fertility symbols like we have of our goddess. But the thing is that we developed, for many years, we developed in a very, very different, in a very fantastic way, whereas the countries in the West were still fighting. You still had the, the Gauls, and you still had the Crusaders coming. It was a very poor country, the countries of Europe were almost not civilized. And if you look at till the Tudors, till the Stuarts, you look at the way they lived. Their parliament came out so late, whereas we as a civilization were already so well developed. None of them had the Vedas, none of them had the Arankyas, none of them had the books of knowledge as we did. I'm not talking about looking back at India as a hoary, the wonder that was India. I still believe the wonder that is India. But with us, we have a deeply plural culture, a culturally diverse geography and an ecosystem. And if you look at all our 29 states and I think 11 union territories, each one is a country within itself. I always believe that India is a continent, it's not a country. So if you go to Madhya Pradesh, and you see the Kula Devatas and the Grama Devatas in Madhya Pradesh, and you go to Uttaranchal and you look at the Devi worship there, it's completely different. You have lot more ghosts and ghouls and all kinds of things in the mountainous regions, because the culture of the people who live in the mountains is dotted with the stories and the mythos of that region. You look at the indigenous, what we call the tribal societies, they are guided completely by nature. The Maua tree represents everything from medicine to food to alcohol. They get everything from there. So their Pithora gods, the Gonds have their own gods. So they worship, and I think every community, every society, so there is a local, there is a national, and there is a global. So in India, we are very, very layered. So if we begin from an indigenous state to a city state to a metropolitan state, it's all very different, and things are changing all the time. I wonder if I could have even answered that question.
Very well answered.
Now I would like to request Raghav sir,
Abhilash sir.
Abhilash sir, the founding member of Society for Culture and Environment, to please come forward and felicitate the author and the discussant with a memento as a symbol of love, respect and gratitude. Please give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It is a painting. This is a painting of BLF mascot. It's based on the tribal art by Padmashri Bhuribai ji.